Hello and welcome along to the Property Academy podcast by Opus Partners. I'm your host, Steve McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
And this is a show that helps Kiwis go from 0 to 5 investment properties so you can be financially free even when you don't know where to start looking for that first property. Now, stick around for the next 15 minutes because you're going to learn the 5 different ways to find property in New Zealand, and they're not all Trade Me. You're also going to learn the best agents and companies to check out and how to analyze any property in New Zealand. Now, one of the things that's really important to mention, Andrew, is we at Opus Partners help people find investment properties, but we only make up kind of 2% to 4% of the investment market. Now, I think that's pretty good that like 2% to 4% of New Zealanders choose to buy their investment properties through us, but it also means that there is over 96% of New Zealanders who we might not be the right fit for. And that's really cool too. So even though we help people find investment properties, in today's episode, we're going to talk about lots of other companies that you could use and lots of other ways you can find those investment properties too, just so that we are being as upfront and honest as possible. Now, Andrew, what's kind of first of the 5 ways to find investment properties in New Zealand?
So the most probably traditional way, which is just the on-market deals. And often we're going to talk about using a thing called keyword hacking. And this is what you already know and love. So this is your Trade Me's, your realestate.co.nz, your OneRoof, going through that and looking at your actual property listings. Now, the good news is if a property is online and it's on market for sale, well, you're probably going to have access to it through those websites. And of the 48,000 plus properties that are available, you can go through and you can actually filter through those properties. Now, the way you filter through it is you've got to actually set yourself some criteria first. So you need to know whether or not you're going to rent it out right now or whether or not you're going to do some renovations and then rent it out. You need to decide, do I want a small town where properties are cheaper, or do I want a more stable area like a main centre? Do I want multi-income properties, or do I want a single family home, like a more traditional property? And once you figure out what you're going to look for, then you can use these tools to actually narrow down your criteria.
And the thing that most people miss is they just go to Trade Me and they think, okay, well, I'm here now, I'm on Trade Me property. Well, I've got to have some filters because there's 46,000 properties currently available on there. So well, I'll just start with my area because I know my area.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, well, I live in Auckland and that's 15,000. Okay, well, that's too many to look through. So why don't I just look in my actual part of Auckland? So I don't live in Franklin, I live in Auckland City. So let's go to Auckland City and just see, okay, there's 3,600. I live in a 3-bed house, so let's find a 3-bed house. And all of a sudden, you're looking for properties in the exact same way that you would if you were buying your own home. But you're not looking for a home that you want to live in. You're looking for something that's going to be a good asset, that's going to be a good investment. And so before you even go to a Trade Me or OneRoof or realestate.co.nz, it is very, very, very important to figure out what is it that you are actually looking for. Now, one thing that I know some Kiwis are looking for are properties that already have tenants. And I remember a listener of the show once saying to me, Ed, it was very important to me that I found a property that was already tenanted because I couldn't afford the mortgage if there wasn't a tenant already in there. I didn't want to have 6 weeks or 4 weeks of vacancy where I don't have a tenant in there. I needed one right in there. Okay, well, there are, as I said before, 46,000 properties currently available for sale on Trade Me. But if we look for tenanted properties, and the way you do that is you type tenanted into Trade Me and put what are these called? The double quotation marks.
Inverted no.
The bunny ears.
Yeah, okay.
If you put that around the word, there are 46,000 properties on Trade Me, but only 646 are tenanted.
Wow, that's narrowed it down quite a lot.
And then you say, okay, well, I already live in Auckland, so I might want to find an investment property somewhere else in the country to kind of spread my eggs around. One of the areas that we've been talking about that has some opportunity for a while is Canterbury. Well, there are only 69 results for tenanted properties within Canterbury. Now, that is only 2 criteria that we've put in. We want a property that's tenanted. We want a property that's in a certain location. Now we've got that short list that we can actually go through. There ain't no way you're going to be able to check out 46,000 listings. You can probably check out 69 and see what's pretty good for you. And so these online portals can be quite useful if you already know what you're looking for. But most people probably already know that Trade Me is an option to find properties. What a lot of people don't realize is there are property sales that happen that where those properties are never listed on Trade Me. They're called off-market deals. Talk to us about these.
Yes, so an off-market deal is where a property's not going to be publicly available for someone to buy. And the way you might find one of those is, I mean, that's what we do here at Opus Partners. We would deal with a developer and we'll have properties which are off-market. They're not going to be publicly advertised. They're not publicly available. Or you could go to someone like I Find Property. So they're a buyer's agency where they will work with you and set your criteria, and then they'll go out and find that property. Now that's more for the existing property market.
Yeah, so if you're looking for existing properties and you want to do a renovation, then a company like I Find Property could certainly be the right fit. I mean, what are some examples of the sorts of deals people are able to get from an off-market deal?
Well, I think the biggest thing at the moment is if you're buying new, for example, developers have had a real squeeze over the last couple of years, and there's a lot of pressure from their financiers to get properties sold. So it tends to be that if you're getting something today, you might get a particularly good deal if it's off market because they're not having to pay for marketing and they're under pressure. To give you an example, just last week, there was one remaining unit in the development and the developer just wanted it done. They cut like 10% off the price and they'd already discounted it to be able to get it wrapped up for someone.
What, like 50, 60 grand?
70 grand.
Oh.
Yeah. And like that, yes, that is the value for that person today, but the reality is, had that developer not been under pressure to move on to his next project, he wouldn't have done that deal. So I think that person got a really good deal.
And one thing that's important is as you are looking at properties, it is very important to get out of what we call home buyer mindset, just looking at it, oh, it's got 3 bedrooms and I like the look of that hallway, Andrew. We'll be able to hang some nice family pictures in there. And we need to move out of that home buyer mindset and get into investor mindset. That's where we take a cold, hard look at the numbers. And the best way to do that is by using Opus Plus. This is a free app where you can run the numbers on any investment property in New Zealand, and over 20,000 Kiwis are already using this to run the numbers on their investment property. So we'll put the link in the description for where you can go create your free account. And then the third way to find properties, and we're still really in the off-market space because this is kind of the I was going to call it the hidden underbelly, but it's not like dark or deceitful.
The thing you don't know about.
But it's the properties that you might not know about. Off-market deals happen with real estate agents all the time as well. And how does that typically work?
Well, sometimes someone might want to sell a property, but they just don't want to go to the disruption of telling their tenants, for example. They might just say, hey, I want to sell this property, but if I tell my tenants I'm going to sell the property, they might leave. So I'd rather just see if I can find someone without disrupting them. Or maybe they just don't want to have open homes. It's their own house. And they say, oh, look, I've got a valuable house. Someone with money might buy it without having to actually come through and have open homes every Sunday where people are going to traipse through my house and look through my drawers. So,
are you worried someone's going to be
very worried,
sniffing your knickers?
Just worried about the drawer inspections in general. So I can absolutely see there'd be some people that might say, hey, I might not get necessarily top dollar, but I'm going to get a private dollar. It's gonna be easier for me, so I'll take that.
And the important thing, if you are gonna look for off-market deals through real estate agents that they haven't put online yet, very important to create a relationship with the right agent, because there's no way you're gonna become best buds with every real estate agent in New Zealand. So if it was me, what I would do is create a relationship with an investment-focused real estate agent. And a really good example of somebody who does that is Angela Webb. She's based out of Christchurch and Canterbury, but she only focuses or specifically specializes in investment deals. So, for instance, she's got this listing at the moment. I don't know whether this is
17 bedrooms.
That's why I wanted to show you it, because I don't know if this is a good property or not, but it is definitely investor focused. 17 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms. My understanding is they're all tenanted at the moment, or there'll be some existing rental income.
So it'll be a room by room rental, I'd imagine, somewhat of a boarding house situation, maybe generating gross income of 150 grand a year. So someone has gone to the trouble of getting this to be a really high yielding property. This is an investor focused product. It's not going to be something that you and I buy to raise little Jimmy, right? It's not going to be a family home anytime soon, but this is the type of thing that an investor who's just looking for yield, they might have cash to buy this and they can live off the income for their retirement. This is the kind of thing that you buy when you're at the crossing the finish line stages.
Yeah, so if you had $1.5 million in cash and you wanted to turn that into a rental income, this is the sort of property you'd probably look at. Now, these are just some of the listings she's currently got. She's probably got some off-market deals as well, where people approach her because she is an investment-focused real estate agent. And so these are the sorts of people that you want to have relationships with, as opposed to just the average real estate agent who's more focused on buying and selling own homes. The fourth way to find properties is a bit of a strange one. Not everybody's going to do this, but door knocking. And what's the other thing?
Honestly,
letterbox dropping.
I would have a can of mace if you came and knocked at my door like that.
Hello, Andrew. I'm here to buy your house. But it's quite interesting. Sometimes you can create an off-market deal by going and finding it yourself. And Andrew, back when you were doing up earthquake-damaged houses, you actually used this strategy.
Yeah, we dropped probably hundreds of thousands of leaflets in people's letterboxes over a number of years. We had a guy, Cullum, who used to go around door knocking, or he'd just ring people. So what we might do is, say, for example, we bought a property in Cranford Street, number 35 Cranford Street. I'm just making that up, by the way. We didn't buy that. Then we might look at every other property down the street just on Google Maps and say, oh, these all look good. Then we'd look up the owner. We'd look up the owner's phone number. We'd ring them. Hey, we bought one down the road. We'd like to buy yours. Would you be interested in it? And just try and generate a lead like that.
How many no's did you have to get in order to get the one deal, the one person saying yes?
I reckon it was hundreds to get a yes.
Yeah,
like hundreds to get a foot in the door, probably, kind of thing. Like we from the flyer side of things, especially because that became more popular, we dropped probably, I would say, a few hundred to get kind of one phone call back, and then you'd go and meet that person, and that might not even eventuate to a deal.
So you're talking about a percentage of a percent actually end up going through. But if you can get that right deal, that is another way to create an off-market transaction. This also happens sometimes with home buyers. I was talking actually to a radio host, because I was on, I do a little bit of radio now, and I was talking to one of the hosts about how they bought their house, which is they were renting it from the owner, and then they were thinking, do you know what? This is quite a nice place. I wonder if the owner would sell it to us. So they found out who the owner was through their property manager, and they called them up, took them out for coffee up north, drove a couple of hours north to go meet this guy, and ended up saying, hey, would you sell it to us? Now, they didn't get it for a song, but they got a pretty good deal because the landlord said, do you know what? I've done pretty well out of this. Probably bought it for a box of raspberries, and you had 20 cents back in the 60s.
Box of raspberries pretty expensive nowadays, though.
Oh, actually,
you can probably buy a house for a box of raspberries.
Well, it depends how big the box we're talking is, Andy. So that is another way that you can create an off-market transaction.
Do you know that just at the weekend, so Ed always rolls his eyes when I tell him when I've been listening to someone like Rory Sutherland, who's a marketing guy on TikTok, because he's worried then that I'm going to give him some marketing ideas. But Rory Sutherland was talking about a couple who wanted to buy a property, and they wrote handwritten letters to 8 properties. They ended up getting 5 callbacks and then went and saw the properties. These are properties that weren't for sale, and ended up buying one.
That is a very high response rate.
Yes, handwritten was the key.
Oh, yeah. I'll start handwriting notes.
Yeah.
Dear Andrew, will you sell me your house?
We actually did do handwritten notes that then we just copied, but we did it in such a way that it looked quite authentic.
And then probably number 5 is, if you don't have real estate agents on speed dial, I'm actually seeing people doing private transactions, off-market deals on social media now. And you were telling me a story just before we hit record.
Yeah. There's lots of people that are saying that are facilitating private transactions. Now, the REA, who regulate real estate agents, might come down on this a wee bit over the next wee while, because it's pretty fringy, the way people are advertising things for a transaction. But you do see, like in property investor chat groups and online Facebook communities and stuff like that, people talking about properties that are for sale and brokering that deal. like a real estate agent. I actually got a message just yesterday from actually a listener of the show, I think, saying that he had a couple of properties, or maybe 3 properties around Christchurch, wondered whether or not anyone would want some tenanted properties off market deals. And I guess it's just that they don't want to go through the hassle of marketing, choosing an agent, doing all that stuff. So they said, hey, we'd do a private sale if someone was interested.
And then somebody approached you with some development land for sale as well. That would have been an off-market deal.
Yep. I was contacted only a week ago. Someone had a bunch of land around Auckland, and again, they didn't want to go through the traditional way of using a real estate agent, and so said, hey, do you have any developers that would be interested in this?
Even on Instagram the other day, I saw, we will name drop, hopefully she doesn't mind. I think her Instagram account's My Property Diary. Investor in Christchurch, had some properties that they said, hey, this is an off-market deal that somebody might be interested in. So it's amazing. Even on Instagram, if you follow the right people, there are deals out there as well. Now, of course, all of these come with varying levels of risk, but I suppose the main thing we want to get across today is going through trade. We go through OneRoof, going through realestate.co.nz. That is just one way to find properties in New Zealand. And to be really successful doing that, you really need to know what you are looking for, because you cannot look at 46,000 properties that are currently listed available for sale. And what a lot of people don't realize is there is this whole world of off-market deals that you might like to consider. Now, one option to do an off-market deal is through a company like us, Opus Partners, but there are lots of other companies or people that you could follow, real estate agents you could work with as well, depending on what you are specifically looking for. So over the last 15 minutes, you've learned the 5 different ways to find properties in New Zealand, the best agents and companies to work with, and how to analyze any property in New Zealand using that free app, Opus Plus. Right, let's wrap it up there, but please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really does help us get the message out to more people. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Steve McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicol.
We're going to be back here tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.